I don't even know who Conor Benn is.
I don't know.
He like supposedly is a pretty big name in boxing, but I never heard of it. If that's the case, Turkey and Dana are in on this, and they say, and Dana really wants to do it because he hates Oscar De La Hoya, he hates Eddie Hearn, he hates these people. He's like, hey, let's take their biggest star and pay him, even if it's $15 million for. Like, I could see it being out of like an ego thing. If they really paid him $15 million, it's like, yeah, it's crazy how you just put in so much work in the UFC, to build this name, create this character, be this star, you know, and it's like, I'm not making $15 million fight.
All right, so Dana White's Zuffa Boxing has just made a major acquisition in stealing away Conor Benn from Eddie Hearn for a staggering $15 million contract, and the effects of this deal are being felt both in the boxing world as well as the MMA world. Needless to say, Dana White has never signed a contract under the UFC banner for anything even close to $15 million, and there's been more than a couple of UFC fighters who've begun to call out how utterly bullshit it is that Dana's willing to spend this much for one boxer when he couldn't even pay this much to his biggest stars in the UFC. Conor McGregor, at the height of his career, was paid a guaranteed purse of $3 million when he fought Khabib, which is still the best-selling pay-per-view the UFC has ever done. And yes, McGregor received pay-per-view points, and it's estimated that he made around $50 million when it was all said and done, but by the time that Conor Benn completes his one-fight deal with Zuffa Boxing, he'll probably have made much more than McGregor did when he fought in the biggest fight in UFC history. Moreover, the war of words between Eddie Hearn and Dana White has been kicked up a few notches as a result of this signing, which I'm excited to get into, and yeah, in this video I'm going to be talking about all this and more.
I truly believe it is a flex move by Dana White. Like he said, if you guys have been following the headlines of him going to battle with all the boxing promoters, he said it's like fighting babies. And I quote, fighting babies. And, you know, $15 million for one fight, it's crazy because what's going to happen after this fight, right? Is the $15 million worth having Conor Benn? It's the first time I've heard of him.
Yeah, to echo Mighty Mouse and Sean O Malley, I had never heard of Conor Benn before this signing, and after doing a very small amount of research on him, it seems like his biggest claim to fame are his 2 fights against Chris Eubanks Jr., where both fights sold out a 50,000 person stadium. I do know of Chris Eubanks Jr., but from my understanding, the reason why these fights were as big as they were is that Conor's dad and Chris's dad were both pro boxers, and they both had a historic rivalry back in the 90s. My point here is that I think that the storyline of 2 sons picking up where their dads left off was the bigger draw than either of the fighters themselves, but definitely correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't watch boxing. Furthermore, someone please tell me if this is the resume of a guy that deserves to be paid $15 million a fight, because to my untrained eye, it doesn't seem that way to me, and it seems like a lot of boxing fans agree with me. That being said, I agree with Mighty Mouse 100% that Dana White pulled this move as a massive fuck you to Eddie Hearn, seeing as Conor Benn is one of his biggest stars that he had at Matchroom Boxing. Dana is the pettiest girl on the playground, and it's clear that he pulled in his daddy Turkey to front the $15 million to flex on Eddie. And to quote DJ quoting Dana, he did in fact say that entering the world of boxing has been like beating up babies.
There hasn't been any pushback. Okay. This is like beating up babies. I feel like I came in and I'm beating up babies. I expected more. I expected some pushback. I expected some, I don't know, them to be more game. They're all way out of their league. Like, absolutely, positively out of their league.
You know, I used to know a guy in high school who would brag about how much money he had, and he would always tell people how much better he was than them because of how rich he was, but obviously he was just talking about his dad's money, and Dana right here is kind of giving off that same vibe as the guy I used to know. Because for as smug as he's acting here, I can't help but think that the only reason Zuffa Boxing is even remotely off the ground right now is because of his partnership with the Saudis. They are quite literally bankrolling the entire operation right now, seeing as they have a majority stake in the company at 60%. Dana's line about beating up babies is pretty funny, but it kind of loses its effect when you realize that he can only make moves like the Conor Benn acquisition because the Saudi Arabian sports washing initiative has given him a blank check. We have seen 2 times now that when Dana tried to enter boxing before, he wasn't able to get anything done, and when he crashed and burned then, it was boxing is so broken nobody could fix him, but now that he has the Saudis backing him, all of a sudden it's beating up babies.
And then, you know, I heard about the if you want to call it an increase in bonus structure, and like this is why I wasn't bothered to be excited initially, because for me that doesn't do enough comparatively to the amount of money that they've just brought in for themselves. And then to see, you know, obviously, you know, Dana White, he's always been quite excited about going into the kind of the boxing world and kind of doing other things like the, you know, the slap fighting and all that kind of stuff. But then to see it and how quickly he values people away from, how highly he values people away from a sport that kind of built his reputation. It's just upsetting, to be fair. It's disappointing more than anything. And that's probably all I'll say on that.
MVP really hits the nail on the head here. Dana is so quick and happy to throw a massive bag at Conor Benn just to spite Eddie Hearn, but it ends up being a massive slap in the face to every UFC fighter past and present. UFC fighters have made Dana White into the overly celebrated and fraudulent business mogul that people view him as today, and instead of rewarding them at all in any capacity, he goes on camera to brag about a massive acquisition in boxing. Oh wait, he gave them higher bonuses that are completely disproportionate to how much more money they got from Paramount. Oh, my bad. Is Conor Benn a bigger star than Ilia Topuria or Alex Pereira or Conor McGregor? In each case, I'd say that he's probably not, which then begs the question, why the fuck is his contract so much bigger than theirs? Oi, bro, but Conor Benn is popular in the UK, innit? I don't care. The biggest stars in the UFC are known worldwide, and they're probably making, I don't know, a quarter the amount maybe that Conor Benn's gonna be making with Zuffa Boxing. Also, isn't Dana the same guy that's criticized boxing where all the money gets paid to the very top fighters on the card? How much do we think that Conor Benn is making in relation to the rest of the Zuffa Boxing fighters? I have no numbers to back this up, but I get the feeling that if you take all the other contracts of all the other Zuffa Boxing fighters and add them up, it's not even going to be close to $15 million. It's probably not even close to half that. The funny thing is, Dana's talked so much over the last couple of years how he's going to completely change boxing, but this move, which is undeniably a big move, is almost him accepting the fact that he needs to fall in line with the norms of modern day boxing in order to succeed. He spent the entirety of 2025 talking about how he's going to create homegrown stars, much like he did with the UFC, but less than a month into Zuffa Boxing's lifespan, he makes an enormous acquisition of an established fighter. And although I do think that a huge reason for getting Conor Benn was to give a middle finger to Eddie Hearn, I also think that either he or the Saudis, or maybe both, had to have realized that there's just no way that his original plan for Zuffa Boxing would have worked out had they not signed a big name.
How do you think UFC fighters will be feeling seeing the figures?
Sick as a dog. Sick as a dog.
Deal.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a UFC fighter, you're looking at this Zuffa going, what the fuck? I'm being absolutely ripped off here. I'm generating more revenue than these guys, and I'm getting a tenth of the money. But listen, there's no loyalty in that game. Look at Aspinall. I mean, he gets his eyes gouged out, and he just gets humiliated by UFC, and basically told everyone he's a liar and he's a pussy.
Eddie's not wrong. I can't imagine that any fighter on the UFC roster is happy to see the Zuffa Boxing news, but most are too afraid to speak out because they know that they're going to get punished one way or another. That's why I really admire Sean and MVP for at least expressing that they're disappointed, but in reality, I'm sure that they're pissed off at the situation, rightfully so. Honestly, I'm not that surprised that MVP said something because he's always been outspoken when it comes to his career, but for Sean, who has all the Dana White privilege in the world, for him to go against the UFC in any capacity says a lot. Sean is probably one of the higher paid non-champions on the roster. The UFC has pumped so much money into marketing him as the next superstar, and they've blatantly set him up for opportunities that he probably hasn't deserved time and time again. When your golden boy is as confused, mad, and disappointed to question the moves you're making, I think it's safe to say that the rest of the roster probably feels the same way. Eddie is right, the top UFC stars absolutely generate more revenue than Conor Benn does, but they're now going to be paid a tenth of what he gets paid. Dana White bootlickers have been saying for years that the UFC model only works because the fighters get paid as little as they do. Well, what about now? Dana clearly seems pretty confident that he can make money with Conor Benn, who's probably going to make more money in one fight than the entire UFC roster makes throughout 2026. Dana's also said for years that the boxing business model isn't sustainable, yet here he is copying the boxing business model. Can anybody who still somehow believes that UFC fighters are fairly paid please try to justify it now? Yes, Zuffa Boxing has a blank check from the Saudis in order to develop the business, but seeing as the UFC now has $7.7 billion lying around and they brag about record profits every year, I feel like there might be a little bit of room to pay these guys a little bit more than $12K to show and $12K to win. I swear, Dana White bootlickers make it seem like it's still 2001 and the UFC is massively underwater. They can absolutely pay their fighters more, they just don't want to.
Is there a bigger pussy than Eddie Hearn?
He was quite upset that Conor Benn left it.
Is there a bigger pussy than Eddie Hearn? This guy's supposed to be your friend. You're fucking crying. He made more money. He's going to make more money, and he had the right to match it. He could have matched it.
I think he said he tried and Conor Benn wouldn't return his calls.
What a crock of shit. Yeah. We're literally beating up babies.
The only thing that might be worse than Dana not getting what he wants is Dana getting exactly what he wants. From what I've seen online, boxing fans have called Conor Benn leaving Eddie Hearn a straight up betrayal. Apparently, Eddie has gone to the ends of the earth to defend Benn from fans in the media, so splitting up with him is a big deal. It's kind of crazy to me that Dana is calling Eddie a pussy for being upset about Conor leaving him, because I seem to recall Dana throwing a bitch fit when Francis Ngannou left the UFC. I also think it's funny how Dana's criticizing Matchroom Boxing for not matching the $15 million as if the Saudi Arabian royal family aren't literally trillionaires. And And if it's true that Eddie and Matchroom were willing to match the $15 million and Conor Benn didn't return their calls, then that's pretty fucked up. Dana just pisses me off lately. I mean, he's always pissed me off, but lately he's been moving like such a hoe. By his own admission, he doesn't do anything at the UFC anymore except for press conferences here and there, but when he does do press conferences, he barely even gives a shit. And then there's Power Slap, which has always been the dumbest, most ego-driven business venture I've ever seen. And now with Zuffa Boxing, he's acting like he's come to save the sport, but he's quietly just doing the same stuff that other promoters do. And I know that I've said this before on my videos, but I'll just repeat it here. Every time that Dana White has any success in business, it has not been because of him. The UFC was successful because of the Fertitta brothers, and if Zuffa Boxing ends up being successful, then it will absolutely be because of the endless bank account of the Saudi Arabians. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know your thoughts on Dana White acquiring Conor Benn. Do you think that this was a good business move from Zuffa Boxing? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
And so that's number one. Number two, we know about how close Eddie and Conor are. We know about Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith staying by his side, fighting for him, defending him through his whole process with the British Boxing Board of Control, all the stuff that happened in the lead up to the first Eubank fight that never happened, to the second one, to the third one, everything that happened, all the arguments, all the debates. Eddie and Conor were joined at the hip. It seemed like they were more friends than promoter-fighter. It seemed like they had the strongest of bonds and one that would never break, just like it never broke with Anthony Joshua, just like it never broke with Katie Taylor.